little clarification to the video I did yesterday. I had a few emails and it seems that I may have confused a few people about the reflection on the apex or the burr area of the knife and what that means. Okay, so let's just do a little clarifying here of what we're talking about when we use certain terminology and parts of the knife. Now I grabbed this Mora knife because it's a very good example of a knife with a very big bevel. All right, so we have the base part of our knife here, the big sloped angle portion going up to the very edge. This is our bevel. Okay, that's the angled parts. The very peak, like if we were talking about a roof, that is our apex. And if you were going to go under like very, very high magnification, that very fine edge that we're talking about, we call that a burr. Now, I've grabbed some aluminum foil here to kind of use as a demonstration of what I'm talking about when we talk about a burr. And I think a piece of aluminum foil will probably be a pretty good example of it. The very edge of your knife, the burr, is really a very thin piece of metal where the two sides have come together and it's flexible. And under really big magnification, it's kind of like this piece of aluminum foil a little bit. If you looked at it, it looks like a little mountain range. It's not a perfectly straight line edge. Now I'm talking under very, very big magnification. You'll see that it actually generally kind of looks like a little bit of a mountain range. So when I was talking yesterday about looking at the very edge, the burr or what we call the apex, and if you see a reflection there, it usually means that edge has rolled to one side or the other, and that's why that knife feels dull. Now, I'm going to grab this Japanese knife here just to show you. You can see this has a very small bevel, right? It's almost, I don't want to say indetectable. You can see it, but when we compare it to like a Mora knife, which is, these are different grinds, but you can see this has a very large bevel, and you're going to see that in kitchen knives. There's different bevels, but we're not talking about the bevel area. We're not talking about the side of it all. We're talking about that very edge. What I was trying to show was that if you're looking down on that very edge, if you see a reflection there, it's usually an indication that apex or we'll say the burr has rolled over. And what does that mean? When I say rolled over, here's my demonstration. So here's our burr, right? Our foil burr. If it rolled over to the side, it's like it did this. And do you now see the giant reflection line we have there? Well, that's what's going on, but it's just at a much more microscopic level. And if you were to touch this, right, that's dull. It's a bent over piece of metal. That's not going to cut you. And when you see that big reflection like we see there, we know that that piece of metal just folded over to the side. Now, when you hone a knife and you're bringing it down that honing rod, what it's doing is it's re-straightening out that burr, which is the sharp part of the knife. And that's why it brings that sharpness back, is all it's doing is taking that folded over burr and bringing it back straight, and it's cleaning it up a bit and, some other things at a very microscopic level. That is what's going on there. Now, that's not the only reason knives go dull, but the reason we show this is because it's probably the most common reason that a knife goes dull, and that's really easy to look for and detect. I'm not going to get into all the different things that can go on with burrs, because there's lots and lots and lots of them. And, we have wire burrs that when you look under the microscope, it looks like a little piece of wires up here. Sometimes a burr breaks off, and that's when the knife goes dull. So if you've ever taken a piece of metal and bent it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it breaks off and just completely shears off, sometimes that's what happens with a burr. Sometimes that whole burr just shears right off, like if we were to tear this piece of aluminum foil, or if we bent it back and forth until it snapped off. And sometimes because of how it snapped or broke free, that's why that knife may be dull. Maybe it won't have as big of a reflection as a rolled edge does, but still might be dull. So keep in mind, there's many things that can happen with burrs. I'm just showing you this because it's probably the most common one. So when we are sharpening a knife, we are actually taking away that metal, creating a new burr, and refining that burr and making it real nice. And that's what makes that knife sharp. And when honing stops working, it's because it can no longer correct this burr that exists on there, and it needs either metal cut away to create a new burr that honing rod can work with. So that's why honing, you can't do it too much, because you're not actually removing metal. You're just kind of refining and cleaning up and making look nice what's there. And eventually that part that is there that's been doing all the cutting either wears off, wears out, breaks off, snaps free, or rolls over so hard that it just can't be straightened out. And that's why the knife eventually is dull and the honing doesn't work. And that's when it's time to go and sharpen your knife. Hope that demonstration helps you guys out. If any of you were confused, some people were asking, well, does a reflection on the side mean it is sharp? No, we weren't looking at the side at all. We were looking at the apex burr of that knife. That's what we're looking at. I don't care about reflections on the side or anything else. This was just to see if it's a rolled edge, which usually indicates a very dull knife.